Writing a good story is hard. Making a good movie is hard. Transforming one into the other is even harder. Welcome to Adaptive Difficulty. This is a show where a couple of book lovers take on the challenge of adaptations. I'm Cameron, and with my friend Josh, we explore the difficult and sometimes bizarre choices that happen in the course of making an adaptation. This week, we're exploring space fantasy with Star Wars, specifically the 1977 film later retitled to A New Hope, and the novelization of the same name from 1976.
The novel is called Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker.
Yes, but if I title it that, no one's gonna look at this episode, Josh. Everyone calls it A New Hope because it's a new hope.
You title the podcast that, and then you give the listeners what they came for, which is accuracy when you describe it out loud.
Well, Star Wars. No, mine says Star Wars A New Hope.
1 second. Mine says Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker, a novel by George Lucas.
Yeah.
So,
do we have the same version?
This might... No, I have the complete trilogy.
Oh, this is also the complete trilogy, but
from my mom's basement.
Oh, I got this one from Amazon because I couldn't find my other one that I actually do own, so I had to order a new one.
This might be the book that has had the most wrong names ever.
Because
it would...
You know what stood out the most to me? Was Jabba the Hutt, where they spell it with just one T.
Do they?
Yeah.
Huh. I meant, wrong name of the book.
Oh, yeah.
Because it would have started as Star Wars from the Adventures of Luke Skywalker, a novel by George Lucas, which is not the name of the movie, and as we now know, it was not written by George Lucas. And then it became Episode 4, Star Wars A New Hope. So, that's one change, and then it still should not say The Adventures of Luke Skywalker, and still should not be by George Lucas, and I think some versions say Alan Dean Foster now, so it's really a mess.
I don't know why anyone would have claimed this story.
Yeah. Well, the story, which is what happens in the plot in the movie, I would understand. But the writing, I think we're going to just spoil this one straight up because I think we have the same opinion, which is that this sucked.
This is a bad book. Bad book.
This is probably... It's not one of the short... We've read kids' books, so it's not the shortest book we've read for this podcast. But it's not particularly long. At least in my edition, it's 180 pages.
Yeah. And
the pages are normal size. We had to keep delaying this record because I could not finish it.
In all honesty, I read the prologue and I read the first couple pages and I was like, oh dear God.
I got farther than that, I think, before I was just done with it, but I seriously considered just being what if the bit for this episode was that I show up not having finished it? Because that would be less painful.
I just, we can just get, into it. I was just
Well, okay.
I guess we talk about our experience with Star Wars first. Because this is an interesting one because we're going from a movie to a book, which we've not done before.
Right. And, I feel like my experience is pretty typical, which is I saw Star Wars as a kid. I like Star Wars quite a bit. I've seen it several times, all the movies. I'm not the world's biggest ever fan of Star Wars because there's a lot of minutia I could not correctly tell you, but I'm probably a bigger than average fan.
I probably would categorize myself as probably a slightly bigger fan than you in the sense that I do know more of the kind of minutia.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's the only, it's not that relevant, I guess, to this book, other than, I was so able to picture exactly what should be happening And the book is, for the most part, as far as the events, so faithful, other than like minor details that I'm sure we'll talk about, that I think that was part of how boring it was. It's just like I did not need someone to describe like shots I remember from Star Wars, but in words to me.
Yeah, and I felt like there wasn't like anything that like added to it. Like there was nothing that I really gained from reading it and having this kind of internal narration of like the character's thoughts and feelings.
Right.
That I could not have.
Well, you expect to have that, and there's only like the slightest. Like I almost feel like, I guess Alan Dean Foster just felt like he couldn't add to the story like unauthorized, so he just didn't. So there's just like nothing there. Like you only get the emotions that are obvious from watching the movie. So,
Well, we do get a lot about C-3PO's emotions, despite the fact that he's a robot.
true. Well, maybe Alan Dean Foster connected with him the most. Okay, I feel like to start off positively, the one joy of reading this, I guess, is kind of seeing some of that minutia that's different, or like deleted scenes, basically.
Yeah.
So, and that's just as like a Star Wars fan, like trivia, basically. But that's like, we can go over some of that. That was interesting.
If I'm being positive,
we've already hated on it for 6 minutes of the record time, so
I can be positive. I think it gets better the further you get into it. And I don't know if that's just because of like, I was like, okay, I'm getting kind of into the rhythm of how this is being written, and I still don't like it entirely, but I can like go through it faster and I don't have to stop at every dumb sentence.
yeah. I think the best part of the book is the same as the best part of the movie, which is when they are on the Death Star.
Yes.
I think I'm saying this extremely graciously, and it's only a small improvement, but I think, and this might be sacrilegious, but I personally find the trench run in the movie itself boring and too long. So I think it was slightly better maybe in the book, but it's still too long. It's like 40 pages.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. Like, I've always kind of checked out of that film after Obi-Wan dies. Like, I guess after they leave the Death Star, there's just, it stops being about space wizards and it starts being about like
flying a ship.
Yeah.
I think the trench run scene is just, there's several minutes, like a long time, where you're just watching like characters you have never seen before get blown up, and they all get blown up in the same way.
And you know what? They recreate it perfectly in the book by introducing characters you've never seen before who get blown up one after another in the exact same way.
But I do think the book did a good job of going back and like adding more context to the overall, how was this affecting the overall battle, like the texture of like where Luke had to be versus where these people getting blown up were. Whereas you don't really get that in the movie. You just see everyone flying in a straight line, and then some of them get blown up every now and then. So.
Yeah, it's very much more like the book has like a plan for how they're going to attack the Death Star, whereas like the movie's just kind of like, we're going to do it.
Yeah, and I think what that is, and I could be wrong, I think this book is either adapted from a very early cut of the movie, or it's just from the screenplay. Probably just from the screenplay. And Star Wars infamously was super edited down by George Lucas's wife at the time. And I think the trench run scene was one of those.
Blessed be
so
her
probably
name.
A lot of that context probably a lot of the context was originally in the movie and was even more boring than we're saying it is now. So it still ended up in the book, where it maybe makes a little more sense to be, but is no longer in the movie. So that's the one part where I thought was maybe an out-and-out improvement. There are other parts which I think are probably level, and most of it is worse. But
yeah, I didn't really find much in the way of like any of it being better per se. I could kind of see what you're talking about with the trench run. I kind of feel the same way I do about the trench in the book as I do in the movie, but where it's not really why I watch Star Wars.
Yeah. Um, the other, I mean, I don't want to just steamroll the conversation here, but the other, I guess, like, this is not really relevant to the movie because it doesn't appear in the movie whatsoever. But I thought the prologue was like neat to see. Um,
I, I just find how like different it is from like what actually ends up happening in the future. And I know that this is written 30
yeah,
years before they like he actually got to do it in like movie format, but just seeing like the like kind of proto idea of what it's supposed to look like versus how we ended up looking at later on.
yeah. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, it's a lot different because the prologue basically describes the plot of the prequels, which you never get in the original trilogy, other than Obi-Wan's discussion with Luke. But it's both different, but a lot closer than I would have expected it to be in 1976. Like, you can tell, even if a lot of the big ideas changed, a lot of the rough draft was there, I guess, already, like in the backstory. Like, Palpatine is mentioned by name, although I think he's just a politician in the prologue. It doesn't mention him having Sith powers, but
Yeah, he just like becomes the emperor and decides to just, I guess, hide himself away, and that's what leads to like the corruption by the Imperial Senate or whatever.
well, he's Richard Nixon, which,
I'm aware.
you know, so would it be even more on the nose in 1976. So but in 2005, he was Richard Nixon with superpowers.
And it was a better movie because of it.
I think it was fun to see, but also, and this kind of goes for what ends up being true of the book as a whole, I think it makes the novel feel more like hard sci-fi, pulpy than the movie does. Like, the movie is Pulp Fiction, but it's more fantastical, right? I think the tone of the novel in general is it's not hard because it's not realistic at all, but it's harder just in like style of science fiction.
I would describe it as like technical, where like there's a whole emphasis on kind of how things work per se, or like here's a bunch of terminology. We start off with like talking about the different kinds of stars or whatever that are like orbiting this.
Yeah,
it's like it's a G1 star and G2 star.
And like at one point, like it describes like the alien races that used to live on Yavin and whether or not it's inhabitable, and just stuff like that. Where I think at one point it mentions like scientists and their theories about like the races on this planet. So it's very much like, you liked what?
I was gonna say I was referencing the idea that they're offering their own kind of theories for, like, on Tatooine, they're talking about, we're seeing the Jawas and the Tusken Raiders, and they're like, some scientists think that they're both the same creature at different stages in their life. And then it's like, other people disagree with this, and then they just kind of moves on. It's very much, it feels almost kind of Hitchhiker's Guide, where it's like, here's what, lots of people think, here's why they're stupid or whatever, and they just move on. Like, it just feels very much like...
Yeah.
It's almost absurd to kind of focus on it.
Right. And it's interesting because when you watch Star Wars, I feel like you almost get... Like, obviously, there's all this amazing technology, but you never think about there being a scientist in Star Wars or an anthropologist.
Well, that's
unless...
It's because they're all...
unless the story is trying to be quirky or point that out. Like, I know Dr. Aphra is a archaeologist, I think, Indiana Jones style, but so
I think it just comes about with like the kind of territory of like, this is like half science fiction, half fantasy, it's space fantasy or whatever, and depending on, and the movie I think leans more into the kind of fantasy aspect of it, where you don't really tend to imagine scientists to exist in kind of the fantasy realm. So it's like they kind of push to the background. Whereas in lots of books or whatever, you have a lot more time and a lot more things to get into kind of the nitty gritty of things. So you're like, okay, let's talk about this.
Yeah. If you were going to describe Darth Vader's appearance the very first time he shows up, how would you write that?
Oh,
I don't want you to spoil anything.
How can one really describe Darth Vader?
Do you think you would have to mention to the reader that he has two legs?
Well, in all defense, it is a science fiction story, and I do think that we come just off talking about 3PO and R2D2, and they mentioned that R2D2 has 3 legs, so it might be like kind of a leftover remnant of that. But yes, I mean,
but I think if you were going to describe that iconic first appearance of Darth Vader standing menacing in the hallway, the first word you use would probably not be 2 meters tall, bipedal.
Yeah, it's probably true. Oh,
but that is what Alan Dean Foster chose, and maybe that's what the screenplay chose, and we can't blame him. But
now I'm just imagining different versions of Darth Vader where he has like 3 legs or like 4.
He has 3 legs.
Yeah, I know of his lightsaber. I mean,
although I did point out the rest of the description is not as bad. So it's 2 meters tall, bipedal, which I had to stop for like a moment because I thought that was such an absurd thing to say. And then flowing black robes trailing from the figure and a face forever masked by a functional, if bizarre, black metal breath screen. A Dark Lord of the Sith was an awesome, threatening shape as it strode through the corridors of the rebel ship. And I thought it made Darth Vader seem more alien.
Uh-huh.
And I almost wondered if maybe Alan Dean Foster wasn't sure whether Darth Vader was an alien or not, and was just kind of going with it.
I think there's a moment later on where they talk about him having like red eyes. He's like looking, he's angry or something, his eyes turn red. I noticed it, but I didn't really take note of exactly where it was. But I almost wonder to what degree the design was kind of set when Alan D. Foster was writing this.
Yeah, he might have looked more alien and like a mixture of organic and stuff when it was being written. I mean, by November of 1976, at least when this was published, you would have known what he looks like in the movie, but maybe he was writing it before then.
See, rather than talk about Darth Vader, I was going to talk about how in this very first, like the first 20 pages, he talks so much about how reflective everything is. I don't know if you noticed that, like how like I feel like on every page there was a line about how like the light was bouncing off this armor or this part of the ship or whatever, and it's like,
I didn't notice that, but it almost sounds like a tick that's like it gives them permission to describe the thing that the light's bouncing off of instead of having to like directly bring it up.
It reminded me a lot of if any of you guys have read Wheel of Time, where the women are always like smoothing their skirts or tugging their braids. It's just kind of a tick.
Aren't they like folding their arms under their bosoms all the time? Okay.
It's just kind of like, it's not bad per se. I mean, I thought this was kind of bad because I kind of noticed it a lot more. And it just felt like,
I mean, writers just have ticks like that.
I know.
And it's just up to whether you already hate the author, whether it's bad or not. In the scene where Luke is moisture farming, which is an extra little bit of fun that we don't get in the movie.
I think we get a little bit about that in the movie.
Yeah, they mention it, but I think he like there's at least a paragraph of him actually farming that moisture in this. You hear a dog barking, so that's fun.
I don't want to jump ahead, but there are so many times that Alan Dean Foster like uses a word or a phrase that like is just so non-Star Wars to me that like I have to like pull back and I'm like, why did he write it this way? Like the fact that he mentions a dog. Like I understand that like of course dogs probably exist in this universe, but like just to see it being written as like a dog and not like some weird space equivalent of a dog seems
But
odd.
There's also like there was no house style to Star Wars at the time.
I know.
Like
the dinosaur line
now
made me upset.
Now they call coffee calf, or whatever. Like they won't even just say coffee, even though that's exactly what it is.
And they call jazz
jizz. those restrictions back then.
I don't know. It's just something where, like, I bet if I had read this at the time, it would not have bothered me because, again, as you say, there's not really kind of a style to kind of how Star Wars language is talked about. It's just being so familiar with Star Wars in this day and age, and being a bit on the kind of further up the spectrum on terms of, like, knowledge about kind of the small details of things. It's very much like this almost reads to me, and this is probably unfair, of like a little bit of like a fan fiction kind of thing where, like, someone's, beginning to start writing things and they haven't quite committed themselves to the universe. I mean, and it feels unfair because it is, but that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, you can't help that that's how it feels, 40 years later. Even though it's also not Alan Dean Foster's fault.
Okay, I found the Vader red eyes line. It's so above her, the towering tower the threatening bulk. This is after Leia's kidnapped. Also, before I go, did you notice that, like, there's so many moments where Alan Dean Foster just refuses to use the character's name and, like, has to refer to them as if we're just kind of watching them, like he's physically describing them.
Oh, I feel like that's such a common thing in, like, overwritten genre, but it's like, the woman in the white dress, because I've already said Leia's name, this paragraph, so I have to call her the woman in the white dress. The kidnapped victim, It's
like, it's just always jumped out to me as, like, the characters were doing something and we were going to jump to another character who was, like, seeing it from the other side of the door or whatever. And rather than just saying Luke went through the door, we see it from Leia's perspective where it's like, oh, this tall blonde man or short blonde man walked through the door.
The ratty farmhand rushed through the
exactly.
door.
And it's one of those things that, like, it just kind of stands out to me. It's like, okay, you don't trust I mean, your audience knows who it is. I don't know why you're trying to pretend that it's like some weird trick or whatever. But
half the time those confuse me, and then I'm just like, who is this a referent to? And it just slows you down. It's either too obvious and you could have used their name, or it's not obvious enough and then you should have used their name. So why do it at all?
But I have above her tower the threatening bulk of Darth Vader, red eyes glaring behind the hideous breath mask. There was a whole lot of smiles and grins and frowns behind mask in this book as well. I'm sorry I'm just dragging this book. Yeah. I don't like this book.
I mean, the mask's eyes are red, but it specifically says that they're red behind the mask in that.
I know, but that leads to the idea that, like, perhaps he's not, like, it's not a humanoid kind of figure.
Yeah. It might not have been settled since he's just behind a mask, and I guess Alan didn't want to commit, or was told not to. I don't know how much involvement George Lucas had. In the bar scene when Obi-Wan, like, kills the guy for making a commotion, he like straight up, like, Terrifier 2's the guy. He cuts him in half from the bottom to the top.
Yeah. What's the line from Shakespeare? From the knave to the chaps or whatever.
Unseamed him from the knave to the chaps.
Listen,
listeners of our way too long Macbeth episode will remember that one. I don't know if we quoted it in that, but that's where it's from.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I thought it was more confusing to read than it was to watch. Just in terms of, like...
Well, I think in the movie it's confusing to watch because you literally can't see it happen, and then the arm of someone who's not involved ends up on the floor. So, like...
But I still thought you can piece it together better than when... maybe I was just dumb the day I was reading it, but I was like, wow, I'm going to have to read this section again to make sure I understood exactly, like, the steps it required to get there.
And again, I don't know to what extent this was just adapted straight from the screenplay, but that's the sense I get. So I wonder if maybe George Lucas went back and was like, or Martha Lucas editing it was like, Obi-Wan should not be that violent, and just, like, murk this guy by cutting him in two.
I mean, it is kind of a weirdly, like, graphic thing to have your, like, mentor figure to kind of just do in front of you.
Wizened mentor. Yeah. And also, like,
Now, I mean,
It's kind of incredible, just think about it now, that they don't dwell on it like at all. Like Luke's not like, man, that fucked me up watching old Ben slice that guy.
well, it's like an alien, right? So like perhaps there's space racism at play.
Oh man, they never got into Luke's space racism in the movies, but that's the sort of hardcore fan content you get when you read the novels too.
I mean,
this has always been a problem with Star Wars. If you have a topic, I feel like I've been bringing up every topic. So,
no, I was gonna start. My next topic was gonna be the droids, and just like, how do you feel about the characterization of R2-D2 and C-3PO in this book?
Well, they can smell. I noticed that's like the main note I made about them.
They can smell. I also like the fact that they can sometimes turn off the smell whenever it's convenient.
Yeah, they like choose whether they want to smell things or not.
Which I think directly, they mentioned that the second time it happens, and I think that directly contradicts the first time it happens, because I think 3PO is complaining about, how he wished he could do it or whatever, because he was like, it smells bad. Or he's like lamenting the fact that like he was created to be able to smell.
And at one point, like when C-3PO is talking about how he can translate every language and he knows the binary language of moisture evaporators and so on, they claim that he is determined to embarrass the Jawas. Like he's trying to oversell himself to like an absurd degree. I don't think, if that's still the intention in the movie, I have never picked up on it.
No, I mean, in the book, he's just kind of got like an oversized ego where he's like super high and mighty in himself, which I can.
Well, that's true in the movies too. Like he's stuck up.
Well,
but the book specifically says he's just trying to like embarrass the Jawas, like get one over on them by being like absurd and over promising in obviously false ways or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't really get that from the movies. At any point that I watched it.
It just assigns him like way more motivation than I ever understood him to have, I guess. Which I guess is like in general, like how like the droids, they're kind of the perspective characters of the movie too, in a way, because you like start out following them, but they kind of get overtaken by Luke, but you kind of keep coming back to them in the book.
Well, I mean, they kind of still are the perspective characters in most of the movie. I mean, they're kind of like, and this kind of ends up being true in kind of. No, I guess that's not the real film. Sorry, I was thinking of a different film version of Episode 9. But I mean, they're
the porn parody. What are you talking about?
Who? Maybe it was Alan Dean Foster's version of Episode 9, and we might honestly come back full circle to it.
That Jenny Nicholson video.
Yes. Well, she did too.
Okay.
But there's
But one was Alan Dean Foster's like pitch.
And I think in that
one was,
it ends up with like Luke on Coruscant about to kill Palpatine or whatever, and he's like, or he's about to die, and he like touches R2-D2, and R2-D2 plays him like the entire movies for him, so he can just because R2-D2's been through everything. And I was just thinking like, oh wait, that makes it kind of a clear through line. I was like, wait, no, like that film didn't exist.
No, they don't. Yeah, they don't really have much to do in the sequels. So they have a lot to do in the prequels. I think it is something that George Lucas was conscious of and tried to keep as a thing. But
yeah, it's pretty fucked up though that they use him as slave labor.
Yeah, they mentioned like droid rights at some point, like, or no, it's like when they get kicked out of the bar because they don't serve droids, and Luke and Obi-Wan are just like, what can we do? So there's more space racism for you.
Yeah.
But we're canceling Luke.
I mean, he's a terrorist.
That's true. Did you have any specific thoughts on the droids that we haven't covered?
No, again, this ties in. I don't like how this book is written. It's like, I feel like every time C-3PO has like an emotion, because I mean, part of the thing about Star Wars droids is that they are basically just people, which is why it's kind of weird that they exist as like the subservient class. But they like almost all of them seem to have, except for the very like the most basic ones or whatever, have like human basically emotions, or they're functionally dogs, or whatever. And it's just every time Alan D. Foster writes about C-3PO having like some kind of emotion, he has to be like, despite the fact that he's a robot or whatever, he has these things. Or I just felt like every chapter that I read was the same chapter over and over again, just in slightly different locations. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. And irrelevant to that, but shortening android to droid, iconic. We love it. I don't know if Lucas or Foster's responsible for that one. Probably Lucas, because that happens in the movie. Slightly less iconic is the shortening of computer to pewter.
Yeah.
Which they do every single time.
Oh. Pewter.
Also, the plates work like ember mugs. They heat themselves. So, that's another note I have.
I could have sworn... So, when they are being sold to Uncle Owen and C-3PO is giving himself, I think he says human-android relation, but isn't the movie human-cyborg relation?
Yeah. Which, again, a lot of the dialogue is just like subtly different in that way. It would take me a long time to find it, I think, but I do think you're right.
I do appreciate, and I don't know why I appreciate it, but I appreciate that they always like write out the name of their character, like like R2D2 and 3PO. Like they never like really do the numbers and the letters. They just like do the actual phonetic spelling of it.
Which that is something that actually is still the like house style of Star Wars novels, is they always write out the names of the droids, and
it makes them feel more human.
I actually saw I saw something that was like, if you want to know how to name a Star Wars droid well, like if you're just trying to come up with one or writing fan fiction or whatever, you should make sure that you can turn it into like a sensible written out name, or else it won't feel right, which makes sense. So, pro tip. So, that's fine. I mean, it was not going to make or break my opinion of the book, but it is kind of a now iconic thing that it does.
We got the blue milk scene.
Yeah. That was one of those things where I was like, I'm surprised that he realized to mention that, because it's like so iconic of a detail now. But if I were if I had like watched the movie, or maybe the screenplay says the milk is blue, but I kind of doubt that.
No.
I probably would not have thought to mention it.
George Lucas had two thoughts in his head when he sat down to write Star Wars. He said, Force, blue milk.
But yeah, it's not something I would have thought to include, probably, if I had been tasked with writing this book. So it's interesting that it made an appearance. Similar to your human cyborg relations thing, Han says that he did the Kessel Run in 12 standard time parts instead of parsecs.
I have to wonder if like Alan Dean Foster knew that what George Lucas had originally written was wrong and he tried to correct it, or if it was just like...
Yeah, it's like his hard science fiction instincts were like, that's not right. I know that's a distance. Like, so he just came up with whatever bullshit he could to fix it, and it got it through.
That's the one thing I do appreciate about Solo: A Star Wars Story, is that they justify why it's called parsecs. That's like the one thing that I think that film does good. If I can explain why.
Well, I think they kind of just stole that from like novelizations that had already solved it. I think.
I haven't read those novelizations, so they don't exist to me.
Well, I haven't either, but I had just heard, like, I had heard that explanation before, and then it happened in the movie, and I was like, oh, okay. So, the book, when they're in Mos Eisley, and they're like getting the ship and heading to it and being tracked, and they keep mentioning this like dark figure like creeping in the corners, watching out for them.
I know exactly who this was, because I played the Lego Star Wars games, and you could buy this character, and I was so confused as to who this character was.
No, I've played Lego Star Wars, but I completely forgot about him. I literally, like, I described him to Rachel and was like, do you remember this guy? Like, we watched this movie 2 weeks ago. Like, when did this happen? And she was like, no, he's not in there. Like, it must be deleted scenes like some of the other content. So we, like, pulled up the YouTube video, and, like, sure enough, he's there. Do you know his name?
Do I know his name? I just know him as, like, the Imperial Spy. I'm sure he has a stupid Star Wars name, but, like...
His name is Gurinden. That's his, like, alien name, Gurinden. But he's also known as Long Snoot.
Well, it shows how good of a spy he is that even you didn't realize it. And you had, like, the third person, fourth wall, omniscient view.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I swear to God, I've seen this movie probably at least once for every year I've been alive. And... I did not know this guy was there. So.
No, like when they first mentioned it, I was like, oh, who's that? And I was like, oh, wait, I know who that is. I played Star Wars.
Although I should also, like, I think a lot of the scenes he's in are also the ones where they were randomly in the special edition were just like, we should put a big CGI creature in the foreground. So he's like even harder to spot than he would have been.
Because you really got to look for him.
Some of the iconic quotes of the movie are longer in the book. Never to their favor. For example, do you remember the quote, there's no such thing as luck?
Yeah.
Do you remember what it is in the book?
It's like there's no such thing as luck, and then he goes on for like another 2 sentences about something.
The full quote, this is just the sentence, but it's long enough. In my experience, there's no such thing as luck. Only highly favorable adjustments of multiple factors to incline events in one's favor.
See, this is it's those lines that I'm like, this is a line that George Lucas wrote. There's no other way that anyone else could have written this line.
George Lucas wrote that. He doesn't understand how humans talk, and it got edited. It either got edited or Harrison Ford was like, I'm not saying that shit. So... Yeah, I can't blame Alan Dean Foster for quoting the screenplay, other than I guess he should have had the good sense that the actors did, but...
Oh, it's just... It's one of those things where, like... It's so fun to just kind of look through this and just see what parts I'm like, this part is definitely an Alan Dean Foster edition, or this part's definitely like, this George Lucas wrote this part down somewhere.
Yeah, that's all George. The last note I have from the whole book is that, first of all, every time I watch Star Wars: A New Hope, the like love triangle angle is way more prominent than I remember it being. Like,
the amount of times that Leia kisses Luke in this book is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Like, but just like starting even with the movie, like obviously at the time they weren't planned to be related, so it makes sense. Yeah. But it's like way more prominent than you remember it every single time, because they tone it down quite a bit even by the next one when they just focus on Han. And then, but in the book, it's like way more sexualized of a crush. I feel like maybe it's just because you're like in Luke's head, but like literally every time Leia appears, instead of calling her Leia, it's like the tantalizing vision of beauty appeared in R2-D2's hologram. Like
he's radiating males riding females, kind of like subreddit vibes.
Yeah, men riding women. We don't call them females, and we also don't call them males, I guess.
Sorry, I had a small stroke.
But yeah, it was a little uncomfortable just because. I mean, again, Alan Dean Foster would have never known when he wrote this, but he also could have not called Leia all those things, so.
Oh. Yeah. The only thing I thought was kind of interesting is that, like, we don't get to actually see Alderaan blow up, we just kind of see like the before and after shots.
Yeah. I think that's one case where it just would have been, I'm sure that was intended to appear on screen. Like, I don't think there's any world where that wasn't in the screenplay, because it's such a big, like, awe moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just for a novel, the tension works better to cut before anything's actually happened and then reveal it to the characters at the same time as the reader. So, again, a part where I have to give him some credit for thinking before he just wrote the book down. I think the same thing happens actually with the Death Star. Like, when Luke succeeds at the trench run, you're in Luke's head and you just kind of have your eyes closed.
Yeah.
And then he wakes back up to, like, Han congratulating him. Whereas in the movie, you can see him explode it, obviously. So you do get the scene that shows that Luke and Biggs are friends in this book.
Yeah, Luke's friends in the book are just very weird to me. Like, so they never really appear anywhere else in, like, any of the serious canon. I'm sorry, guys, to people who are super invested in these side characters. You probably appear in other books, but...
Well, I think... everyone but Luke dies, so Biggs dies in this Death Star one, right? But since he had a name, I'm sure there's, like, tons of content about him out there. I mean, the Legends page for Gurinden Longsnoot was, like, so absurdly long that, I mean, Biggs has to be insane.
This is what Disney denied us whenever they took possession.
I think it's like, first of all, it's like so high school-y that it's weird. Because, like, Luke is high school age, but just like...
He's 20, isn't he?
You don't think of people in Star Wars existing that way. And he is like 20, isn't he? So he's over high school age.
He just does feel kind of
but
like...
it's just so young adult, I guess. Yeah. They're like the greasers in Grease. Like, they head to the garage and work on their X-Wings or speeders or whatever.
What also, like, it's... In the movie, I feel like part of the kind of draw of Luke wanting to leave is that he has really, like, no friends and he sees, like, no real future there, where, like... And he does the same thing in the book, but the addition of, like, his friends...
But in the book, he has friends. Yeah.
It's just
although his best friend Biggs has, like, gone to the academy.
I know.
Or whatever.
And that's also true in the movie as well. It's like, oh, it's his only friend who's left, and now he's kind of just stuck here by himself, playing with Imperial shuttle ships, toys.
Yeah. It is interesting that, like, everyone in this universe, and it's more obvious, like, it's easy to not pick up on the fact that Luke wants to go to Stormtrooper Academy in the movie, but in the book, it's a lot more obvious. It's just interesting that, like, every young adult in this universe, like, is like, well, I guess I'll go to, you know, Nazi Academy, but I'd love to join the Resistance if I could. Like, it's just interesting that it's like,
well, like,
these de facto paths. Like,
well, in the movie, it's like, I want to go to the Academy. It's very clearly like, oh, it's the Academy for Stormtrooper pilots or whatever. And he doesn't really ever express a desire to join the rebellion until he kind of like he knows about it because he hears about it. He's like, oh, I know that thing. Can I join it? But it's like,
yeah.
In this book, it makes it like a very clear idea that, like, this is preferable to doing the Academy stuff, but I also would take the Academy stuff if nothing else came along.
Yeah. I mean, he talks about it pretty soon, because as soon as Obi-Wan mentions the Resistance, he's like, you know of the rebellion against the Empire? So, like, it's already on his mind.
Which is bizarre to me that, like, Tatooine's this, like, remote place in the middle of nowhere, but, like, he's still cognizant enough of, like, how the galactic struggles are happening.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because, like, they don't have, like, YouTube, so they're using the, Star Wars equivalent of snail mail, I guess, but he also has all this
I guess
knowledge. I don't know.
Okay, this is the part where they have the HoloNet, which is the internet, but across, like, it travels faster at the speed of light or something like that. But I think at this point in canon, the Empire has shut down access to it because they're fascist or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just one of those whisper network things where, like, people just know about it, and he goes to town every now and then. And
well, it's also one of those.
Also, I mean, if anything, like Tatooine's in the Outer Rim, right? So if anywhere was going to be a hotbed of, rebellious struggle,
I guess that's true.
It's more likely to be Tatooine.
It is also one of those things where it's like, these are very clearly like meant to be like different parts of like the same country or whatever that he just kind of spread out over the course of a galaxy. Where like,
right, yeah.
His idea of distance doesn't really like hold.
Yeah, true. I don't remember the details of this, but another positive note I had is that the first conversation with Ben is longer and has like a little more lore, which is just fun to read as like a existing Star Wars fan.
I like the scene where he's talking to them. I did not like the fact that he described his room as Spartan, like with a capital S.
Oh, because it's another like non-Star Wars description.
It's in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. Although the book has the prologue, but it doesn't have the opening crawl, so we'll never know if the book takes place a long time ago.
No. Where is it? Somewhere it says in a galaxy far, far away. Another galaxy, another time.
Mine says it on the back, but
at the beginning of the prologue, my first two words are
another time, the future.
But another galaxy?
Sparta is just so legendary. They all watched the
300
Zack
movie.
Snyder documentary.
I'm so glad it made its way out into the universe.
That was like the most pirated movie on the HoloNet.
I mean, it is fast.
That's why there's all those holes that people fall down.
I mean, it is a fascist film, so I guess it makes sense that Palpatine's like, yeah, this one can go through.
I am imagining, like, a world where all Luke Skywalker does is watch 300, like, every day until he is allowed to leave Tatooine.
And join the Stormtrooper Academy.
Yeah.
I was thinking
I'd have to have, like, seen 300 to riff on it more than that, but...
I've only ever seen Meet the Spartans.
That one was banned with prejudice.
Yeah. It is a bad film. While I was reading this, I was like, I wonder... And I did not look it up, because I may want to try and write this on my own. I'm now imagining an alternate universe version of this, where, like... Luke, the droids don't land on Tatooine or whatever, like their ship escapes or whatever, and they're fine. And Luke does go and join the Stormtrooper Academy and how that all plays out. So, I guess it was good for that.
Surely that exists.
It has to, right?
Yeah. I know you don't want to look... I'm going to look it up just to see if it exists. I won't tell you.
No, I got to keep my thoughts pure so my writing's authentic or something.
There's Reddit threads about it. What if Luke joined the Imperial Academy, Heroes of the Empire, Chapter 1?
I think I would call it Star Wars, A New Path. I can get that.
Yeah, well, that's a better name than What if Luke joined the Imperial Academy, which is the fanfiction I found. So,
yeah, well, fanfiction titles are never really that great for most people, because most people are starting out bad writers.
I guess there's not a lot of major established fan fictions with that concept, but it is frequently asked on What If fan forums.
Okay, so we cannot release this episode till I finish writing the book and send it to Disney so they can make it into a film. Or into like one of their like Disney shorts.
Okay. I think they just toss anything like that out as soon as they see it.
No, trust me. I know how to get there. I'll get it there faster than 12 parsecs.
Okay, so I feel like we've exhausted our major thoughts on this novel, unless you have more.
No, other than wrapping up with our final kind of...
Well, so before we give it a rating, do we think this could have been good? Like, is there a universe where there's any reason for this to exist?
I'm going to say yes, but that's only because I know of other novelizations that I like better of other Star Wars films.
Okay. And we'll get to those 6 years from now if I know the one you're but I guess, I mean, this literally, I was so miserable reading it that I like stopped and thought about it and was like, why does this exist? Because you can just watch Star Wars.
I mean,
and
I mean, I love the opinion that the best way to consume Star Wars media is to do it at a very surface level kind of way of doing it. Like, if you go any inch below the surface, you've already messed up. So,
but it's like, I get adaptations into movies because movies are more immediate and visual. So there's bringing something to the story that books maybe can't. And also, just to be honest, they are more accessible. Like, more people are going to see the movie than will ever read the book. So that's another possible virtue of them. But like, turning a movie that's already a movie into a novel, it's like,
well,
unless you take a lot of artistic liberties, you're not going to tell me anything that the movie didn't already. And the movie told it to me faster and more dynamically.
Well,
So,
the benefits of doing it into a book is that you get to see more of kind of the character's internal world, which like actually kind of spelled out for you and kind of see their thought processes or their kind of emotions.
right.
Or you can see kind of artistic liberties with the word if you're going real, like imagine if this was Star Wars, the novelization written by William Faulkner. Now that'd be a book I'd read.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And there are those weird, cringy Shakespeare ones, but
which have their own merit here and there. I mean, I just think that like the most obvious one is that you get to kind of be inside the character's head. And we didn't get any of that really.
yeah, I guess ultimately that's the problem, is that just did not happen. And in place of it, it's like, there's this thing that creative writing classes tell you to avoid, which is like doing screenwriting, but in your book, which is like describing every movement and every visual, because like in your head, you're picturing it as a scene, and you're just, instead of writing the emotions and the context of it, you're just writing that visual. And I think this book is just that the entire time, but for a movie that already exists. Like, the prose is just what is on screen at any given moment.
Yeah, that's a kind of a fair criticism, I think, where it's just like,
yeah, so it made me throw the whole system into question. I was like, should this have ever been done? But I think you've convinced me it's just this book's fault.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever read anything else by Alan Dean Foster, so I can't say whether or not that I super dislike him.
In our rating scale, which we forgot to do last time, although we were covering like 5 things, so turning Star Wars into a novel, how difficult is that?
I mean, whenever I think of it, like, just the inherentness of it being like a movie into a book, that to me already feels like kind of a very difficult thing to achieve, because I'm trying to imagine, like, because when you have like your book transferred to the movie, I'm like, okay, what's your audience ratio going to look like? How much of your audience is going to move from the book to the movie? Well, most of them are sure, or at the very least will go and see it at least once or twice. I'm picturing the reverse, and I'm like, I don't know that many people that would actually who actually love Star Wars, that would actually sit down and read a novelization of the movie. So to me, it feels like it's already trying to like be this, like, it's already like one step higher than whatever we would normally rate something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, which means I would say it's like a Mario level 3 out of 4.
Uh-huh.
Because a Donkey Kong example of this would be like trying to write the novel of, what would it, Requiem for a Dream or whatever, like just something completely absurd. And I'm going to find out that has a novel or is based on a novel, and it seems silly, but and then, yeah, as far as like converting readers and stuff, it is interesting to remember this came out
before.
6 months ahead of time. So its initial audience would have just been science fiction readers, and it would have been new to them, so.
And I do think that's part of like why it gets somewhat of a pass, in terms of like, and what I'm ultimately going to give it as a score, because like, I did not like it. I'll be honest with you, I did not like it. But I can kind of I don't want to say respect, because I don't really respect it either. I can understand why it is the way it is.
Yeah. So what rating is that putting it at for you?
I think I'm going to say that, I don't know, because like, it feels wrong to say that it beats the game, because I don't think it does. Because there are several points in the book where I'm like, I want to put the book down. And I really never that way about Star Wars.
I'm not conflicted at all, because even giving it some grace, even saying, well, there's a little more context here, which I liked. It was fun to kind of get the deleted scenes and like the extra lore as a existing Star Wars fan. The prose itself is so unbearable. Even if this was the exact same book, like it had the same flaws in terms of how it adapts the story, it could have been written better. But instead, it's like insufferable to read. So, I mean, Mario like fell flat on his face trying to hop over the first Goomba. Like, this shit sucked. Like, that's my rating.
That's fair.
It like,
you know what's weird is that I've read.
It's in my very short list of like 3 or 4 books I will mention when I mention the worst thing I've ever read all the way through.
What's so weird to me is that like I read this book when I was much younger. I was in, I think I was in like early middle school, early high school kind of area, where I read all 6 novelizations of the movies at the time, and I recall liking all of them. I don't really, I cannot imagine, because I know how I was when I was in that age. I can't imagine actually sitting down and reading that as a middle schooler.
All right, so are you sticking with my rating, or are you going a little higher?
I'm going to say, so he makes it past the first Goomba, but does immediately go into the pit.
Okay, got it. Well, so here's a fun little like extra lore fact for our podcast. This was originally meant to be the Christmas episode.
Yes, but much like George Lucas, we can't count, apparently.
Yes. Also, we're not holly or jolly. It's January 17th. But next year, assuming we're doing this next year, look out for The Empire Strikes Back on, or as close to Christmas as we can get it. God help us.
Who wrote it this time? It has to be a better author, right?
Donald F. Glut, which shares, or no, not shares, is distinct from Alan Dean Foster in that I've never heard of him at all. So
I will say,
we'll see how that goes.
Glut does sound like the name of a Star Wars character.
True. He's already like halfway there because he sounds more of a kind. So, next episode we'll be covering The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, and then covering the movie adaptation from 1939. I assume that's the one. Maybe touching on other adaptations such as Wicked, but primarily the novel and the 1939 movie.
Are we ready for the outro?
We're ready for the outro. I know it's in the script, so I need to get out ahead of the script. I do not thank Alan Dean Foster for making the world more artful with this novel.
Okay, that's all, folks. As always, we'd like to give credit to those that made this podcast possible, those that worked on the adaptation. Join us next week as we investigate The Wizard of Oz.